Welcome to Gearhaven. This is a gentle fantasy story from the world of the detective Glint, where mysteries are solved with kindness instead of fear. Find a comfortable place to rest and let the Lanternlight guide you. The door at the end of Sparrow Row had never been locked. That was the problem. Detective Glint noticed it because people treated it as if it were. They walked past with quick glances, slowed their steps, then chose another route altogether. Some paused as if remembering something important, then shook their heads and moved on. The door remained. Wooden, well cared for, slightly warm beneath Glint's claw when he touched it. "I don't keep anyone out," the door said quietly. "I just wait." Glint listened. Long ago, the door had belonged to a small workshop where repairs were done slowly and carefully. People came with broken clocks, bent tools, and questions they weren't ready to ask out loud. The door had never been locked then either, but the workshop closed. And without a reason to enter, people began to assume permission was required. They told themselves they didn't belong. Glint opened the door gently. Inside was a narrow room, clean and sunlit, with a single table and a chair positioned near the window. Nothing waited to be sold. Nothing asked to be fixed. It was simply a place to step into. "I don't want to surprise anyone," the door said. "I want them to choose." Glint understood. People feared the door because it asked something of them. Not payment, not effort, but honesty. To enter was to admit they needed a pause, a moment of shelter, a place where nothing demanded progress. Glint sat inside for a while. Footsteps passed outside. Some slowed. One person stopped, rested their hand against the doorframe, then stepped in hesitantly. "Oh," they said softly. "I didn't know I was allowed." The door warmed. "You always were," it replied. The visitor sat. They breathed. They left a few minutes later, shoulders lower, expression lighter. More people followed over the days. Not crowds, just those who needed it. Glint suggested a small change, a simple sign beside the door, carved carefully into the wood. It read, "Open." Nothing more. Nothing else was needed. Weeks later, Sparrow Row felt different, quieter, less guarded. The door remained unlocked, just as it always had been. No longer mistaken for something it wasn't. Before leaving, Glint wrote in his casebook, "Sometimes the hardest thing to believe is that we are already allowed to enter." Glint did not leave the doorway right away. He stayed long enough to notice how people approached now. They slowed sooner. Their steps softened as they reached Sparrow Row, as if the street itself had learned how to lower its voice. The door felt this too. "I'm not different," it said quietly. They are. Glint watched as another visitor arrived. They stood for a moment, hand hovering near the handle, uncertain but curious. When they finally opened the door, there was no dramatic change, just a quiet sense of relief, like stepping out of the wind. Inside, the room offered nothing new. That was its gift. People sat without checking the time. Some closed their eyes. Others simply rested their hands on the table and breathed. No one stayed long, but everyone left differently. The door learned to recognize the sound of honest footsteps. Some came with hesitation, some with urgency, some with no clear reason at all. The door welcomed them all without judgment, never asking them to explain why they had chosen to enter. Over the following weeks, as Sparrow Row changed in small ways. Conversations lasted a little longer. People no longer hurried past the door as if avoiding a question. A nearby shop placed a small bench outside, inviting pauses instead of passage. The door no longer felt like an exception. It felt like permission. One evening, Glint returned as the light faded from the street. He rested a claw against the doorframe and felt its warmth, steady and certain. "Thank you," the door said, "for reminding them." Glint shook his head gently. "They always knew," he replied. "They just needed to see it written in the open." Before leaving, Glint added a second note beneath the first in his casebook. "Some thresholds exist not to be crossed quickly, but to be trusted." Later that night, long after the street had quieted, the door remained gently warm. It did not expect anyone else to arrive, but it stayed open anyway. The city passed around it, moving softly now, less guarded than before. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed quietly. Somewhere else, a light was left on just a little longer than necessary. The door listened, content. Not every entrance needs to lead somewhere new. Some simply remind us that we are allowed to step inside when the world feels too loud. With that thought settled, the door rested, unlocked, unafraid, and ready for the next honest knock. Thank you for spending this time in Gear Haven. If you enjoyed this gentle mystery, you'll find more stories waiting in the playlist. Until next time, keep your lantern close and rest well.